To be fair, though, the movie director clearly wanted me to fall in love with her for the sake of the plot. Did she? I'm sticking a picture of her over my bed. I'm getting good at taking your clothes off. How do you feel about that now? Oh, moms! When young CHR Cher Atkins was offered his big break in the Blue Lagoon, he turned it down. But in a surprising turn of events, he took a chance and became the star of the show. Christopher Atkins tells shocking truths about the pirate movie and the Blue Lagoon. From his rocky start in Hollywood to the unexpected problems he faced on set, his story is full of shocking facts that fans never knew. Christopher Atkins's unexpected rise to fame. Atkins didn't grow up dreaming of Hollywood. Instead, he was focused on sports. As a teenager, he was very involved in sports and wanted to become a professional player. Unfortunately, a series of knee injuries kept him out of the game, which changed his plans for the future. He wanted to become a doctor like his family had done. His siblings and parents were all doctors, but Christopher wasn't looking for fame. Instead, it found him when someone sent pictures of him to a modeling agency. That strange event led him to the Ford Modeling Agency, which was one of the biggest at the time, and he soon found himself traveling for modeling jobs and working with Future. His path to Hollywood wasn't a glamorous plan, it was a series of lucky breaks. So how did you get into this business? For me, it all happened really quickly. It was just by accident. One day, he was asked if he'd be interested in auditioning for a movie. At that point, he hadn't even thought about acting, but he decided to give it a try, thinking it might work. Telling his friends that he tried out for the movie The Blue Lagoon would be fun. But Christopher had no idea how much this audition would change his life. When he walked into the room, he saw a hallway full of other kids trying out for the same part. He didn't think much of it, but after his first reading, casting directors kept calling him back. It got more serious over time, but after months, he got the part. As spring came around, Christopher had moved on and was back at his old job teaching kids how to sail at a local yacht club. Suddenly, they called him again. The directors hadn't found the right actor yet and wanted him to come back one more time. This time, they had one. He was asked to bring a blonde curly wig to the audition, which he did even though he wasn't sure why. That final audition sealed the deal, and he started modeling. Everyone asked me, "How did you get into the business?" he said. I started by modeling, but it was really weird for me because I wasn't planning to become an actor. I just sort of tried out for this movie. The next thing I knew, they kept calling me back and saying, "Let's go to Fiji," so he went to Fiji. But what happened on set that changed his life forever was behind the scenes of Christopher Atkins' journey to landing. Christopher Atkins' path to landing the Blue Lagoon was not easy. As we already said, the audition process was long and stressful. Christopher went through several rounds, and each callback added to the stress. The directors weren't sure about their choice, so they asked Christopher to come back for a final audition, this time with a blonde curly wig. It turned out that director Randall Kaiser had a vision of the lead character looking like a Greek Adonis with the wig Christopher wore. Christopher finally got the part, but getting it wasn't the hardest part. The real challenge began when filming began on a remote island in Fiji. The location was beautiful, but it came with a lot of problems. The cast and crew were cut off from the rest of the world and had to live in tents on wooden platforms for months. Conditions weren't great, and Christopher had to quickly get used to life on a deserted island. The conditions were harsh and there were no real comforts. Everything had to be done on the spot, from finding a place to sleep to surviving each day. The Australian crew was very important to the success of this movie. Without their skill and determination, the movie would not have been finished. They did everything from building the set to making sure the whole production ran smoothly. Christopher often praises the Australians for their work on the movie, calling them the backbone of the whole project. Their teamwork and the fact that they were alone helped bring everyone together, making the experience more than just another movie shoot. For Christopher, this was his first time acting. He had never been on a film set before, so everything was new, like learning what a camera crew did. Christoph Scheer had to learn how to work with a director on the spot. He relied heavily on the support of the crew and his co-star Brooke Shields to get through the tough scenes. And if you think the pirate movie was hard, wait until you hear what Christopher had to deal with there. The controversial nudity in the Blue Lagoon was one of the most talked about parts of the movie. At the time, the idea of showing male nudity was shocking. While films had shown female nudity for years, seeing a young male actor in such scenes was a first. This put the Blue Lagoon in the spotlight, and many people questioned whether it was appropriate for Christopher Atkins. It wasn't just about acting, it was about stepping into uncharted territory. He was only 18 when filming began, and the thought of being naked in front of a crew, let alone the whole world, was scary. At the time, he wasn't sure how to handle it. Male actors rarely played roles that required them to be fully naked, so Christopher's performance was a big change in how Hollywood portrayed male bodies on screen. Behind the scenes, the crew worked hard to make sure Christopher and his co-star Brooke Shields felt comfortable while filming these sensitive scenes. Randall Kaiser, the director, made sure to talk to them openly about how the scenes would be filmed, and they went to great lengths to make sure that everything was done professionally, from the camera angles to the setup on set, with few crew members present for the more personal shots. For Christopher, the experience was more than just It wasn't just a physical challenge, it was also an emotional one. As a young actor, being in such a vulnerable position in front of cameras and crew members was hard. But he handled it all with grace, treating the whole project like an adventure. Looking back, he says it wasn't easy, but the supportive environment and the way the director approached things made it easier to handle. The impact of those scenes on people were interested in seeing Christopher's new movie that broke traditional boundaries, but it also drew a lot of attention to him. Some critics focused more on the nudity than the story, and Christopher's personal life was affected by the constant attention. Friends and family were shocked, and his mother famously collapsed during a family reunion. People at the premiere said, "I haven't seen that in a long time." The movie got mixed reviews, but it still became a hit and opened new doors for Christopher in Hollywood. And just when you thought things couldn't get any crazier, the pirate movie made them even stranger. The making of the pirate movie twists the making of the movie. Christopher Atkins got another lead role after his success with the Blue Lagoon. This time it was in the pirate movie, but it wasn't like any other movie. It was a weird musical comedy that went in a whole new direction that Christopher didn't know about at the time. This movie would become a cult favorite, even though it didn't do well at the box office at first. Landing the part wasn't as easy as his earlier audition for the Blue Lagoon. This time he had to do a lot more than just audition. He also had to be interviewed. Christopher took intensive lessons in all three areas while he was in Australia. His days were filled with singing lessons, dance rehearsals, and sword fighting practice. He was getting ready for the role very hard, but the production hit a big snag early on. The "How Can I Live Without?" The first director hired for the movie didn't work out, which caused chaos on set. The movie was already moving, but this sudden change stopped everything. The producers had to quickly hire a new director, Ken Anakin, which caused delays and added stress to an already difficult situation. The cast and crew had to scramble to adapt to an already complicated production schedule. This made the whole filming process much harder than anyone had expected. Despite the many problems, Christopher's performance stayed steady, and he pushed through the demanding nature of the part. The movie itself, however, didn't do well at the box office. Critics weren't kind to the pirate movie, and it was generally seen as a commercial flop at the time. Christopher had gone from having a blockbuster hit with the Blue Lagoon to having what many saw as a failed follow-up. But the problems behind the scenes didn't end there. Christopher had even more problems while filming the production of the pirate movie. The film had a tight budget that affected almost every part of the shoot. The team had big goals, but the money wasn't always there to support them. This meant cutting corners, rushing scenes, and coming up with creative ways to make things work with few resources. For Christopher Atkins, this added stress made an already difficult role even harder. Dealing with the unpredictable weather and tough filming conditions in Australia was the hardest part of making the pirate movie. The cast and crew spent long days outside, fighting the elements from blazing heat to sudden rainstorms. Filming on location may have made the movie more real, but it also made the shoot much harder than anyone had expected. Christopher had to find a balance between his demanding performance in these tough conditions while keeping the film's light-hearted and comedic tone. Even though the production had many problems, one bright spot was the chemistry between Christopher and his co-star Christy McNichol. The two became close on set, and their chemistry worked well on screen. Their playful dynamic brought a sense of fun and, even though things weren't going well behind the scenes, fans quickly picked up on their relationship, and many credit the cult status of the movie to the relationship between the two leads on screen. Unfortunately, when the pirate movie came out in theaters, it didn't get the response the team had hoped for. It bombed at the box office, and critics weren't kind in their reviews. Many saw it as a failed attempt at a musical comedy, and it was quickly thrown out by mainstream audiences. Christopher had just come off the success of the Blue Lagoon, so this was a tough pill to swallow. He had put in a lot of work, but the movie didn't seem to connect with viewers at first. But over time, something strange happened. The things that critics didn't like about it, the silly humor, catchy songs, and over-the-top performances began to win over fans. Fans started watching it again, sharing quotes and praising its unique charm. Christopher was surprised by the movie's second life when more and more people came up to him not to talk about the Blue Lagoon but to gush over the pirate movie. Christopher's experiences weren't just limited to acting. His time in Australia had a lasting effect on his life. With a deep love for Australia and lifelong friendships, Christopher Atkins's connection to the country began while filming the Blue Lagoon. The movie took him to a remote island in Fiji, but it was the hard-working, laid-back attitude of the Australian crew that made him feel right at home when he later returned to shoot the pirate movie. Australia became his second home, and it wasn't just for movies anymore. Australia's wild and adventurous spirit left a lasting mark on Christopher. The country's natural beauty and the friends he made there have kept him coming back over the years, even after the pirate movie came out. Christopher continued to go back to Australia for personal trips often. Christopher loved the country's sense of freedom and adventure, whether he was scuba diving or exploring the Australian outback. His personal life was just as exciting as his career, too. Christopher's family life and career were both very exciting. Christopher's love story with Australian model Lynn Barron started like something out of a movie. They met while Christopher was working in Australia, and they fell in love right away. Quick romance turned into marriage, and it wasn't long before they had 2 children. They had a happy family, which brought Christopher a new kind of joy. Becoming a father was more rewarding for him than anything he'd ever felt in his acting career. Christopher has often talked about how important his family is to him and how much he loves them. Christopher put his family ahead of everything else as his children got older. He's now a proud grandfather of three, and his grandsons bring a whole new level of excitement to his life, which he often shares with others. Christopher didn't just want to be known as a Hollywood actor, he wanted to be the best dad he could be, whether it was taking part in their milestones or just being there for the little things that happened every day. Christopher has a new appreciation for family after becoming a grandfather and telling stories about spending time with his grandchildren, playing games, and going on trips. Being a father became the most important thing in Christopher's life, even more important than acting while his famous and successful in his career. Christopher's family kept him grounded. He's talked about how much his children and grandchildren have taught him about love, responsibility, and what's important in life. His role as a father and grandfather is one that he treasures deeply, far beyond the spotlight of Hollywood. From fatherhood to sobriety, Christopher has taken on more than just movie roles. Sobriety is the next chapter of Christopher's life. Christopher Atkins has been open about his struggles with addiction and his journey to sobriety. One of the most inspiring things about Christopher's life is that he has been sober for 35 years. After becoming famous at such a young age, he fell into the trap that many people in Hollywood do. He turned to alcohol as a way to deal with the problems that came with it. But Christopher didn't let alcohol control his life for long. He made the brave decision to face his addiction head-on and committed to sobriety. This has had a huge effect on his career and his outlook on life. Choosing to stay sober gave him a better view of the entertainment industry. He talked about how the ups and downs of Hollywood can push people to the edge, but staying sober helped him deal with the stresses without losing sight of what's important: family, health, and happiness. Since he became sober, Christopher has changed his focus. He is still inspired by the country's people and wild landscapes, and he has even talked about wanting to make Australia his home. He would move there permanently, which would bring his life full circle after filming the Blue Lagoon and the pirate movie. Christopher Atkins' journey from a teenage heartthrob in the Blue Lagoon to a cult favorite in the pirate movie is full of surprises, triumphs, and lessons. His behind-the-scenes revelations about both films and his life beyond Hollywood continue to inspire. Thanks for watching. If you like these untold stories, if you want to see more exclusive content, click the subscribe